top story this morning, Cabinet sources hitting back at Tory rebels, accusing them of jeopardising the party's chances in the next general election.
And just yesterday, Boris Johnson's ethics advisor allegedly threatened to quit over Partygate, saying there were legitimate questions about whether the Prime Minister breached the Ministerial Code. Well, Number 10 denies these reports.
Let's speak now to the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab. A very good morning to you, Deputy Prime Minister. Did the PM break the Ministerial Code?
No, as he set out in his letter of response to Lord Geidt, because the fine which he received related to an unintentional and inadvertent breach of the law.
That Lord Geidt is making, that essentially the Prime Minister is making a mockery of the rules of the Ministerial Code. If you could break the law as Prime Minister but still not breach the Ministerial Code. He said that, to quote him, it was at risk of ridiculing it.
Well, I think the confidence in the Ministerial Code is important, but of course not every breach of law amounts to breach of the Ministerial Code, and that's the point in his letter in response to Lord Geidt the Prime Minister has addressed very squarely.
So it's OK to break the law as long as you don't break the Ministerial Code?
No, it's not OK, which is why the Prime Minister apologised, why the overhaul of the Number 10 operation took place, and why the PM has addressed and engaged and responded to all of the different tracks of this, from the Metropolitan Police inquiry, the Sue Gray inquiry, and his response to Lord Geidt.
And do you think the Prime Minister has done enough to persuade your party on this? He's in real trouble now, isn't he?
Well, I think we always hear from the dissenting voice in the media, but what I can tell you is obviously over 350 Conservative MPs. The vast majority of them, when they talk to me, want to see us on the front foot, dealing with the cost of living challenges. The Chancellor announced a £15 billion package last week. There's going to be tax cuts on national insurance in July, £330. The cash grant for energy bills of £400 in October. The other issues like Ukraine, or in my area, dealing with the crime-fighting agenda that I'm working with the Attorney General and the Home Secretary on. I think the overwhelming majority of MPs, but more importantly even than that, that our constituents expect to see us focusing with laser-like precision on those issues.
A lot of people think that the Ministerial Code is a little bit of a joke, given that the Prime Minister has the ultimate say on whether an investigation should take place into himself. He's the judge and jury. Is it not time to maybe bring in a proper independent advisor on ethics, that they have the final say, not the Prime Minister, so the Prime Minister can be held to the same standards as everyone else?
Well, the process for activating or initiating the independent advisor on ethics has been, that's been in place for successive governments. In fact, over recent months, Number 10 has worked with Lord Geidt to reinforce the role, the resource of Lord Geidt, and I think that's important to make sure we have the highest standards. It is important.
Yeah, but Lord Geidt says that the Prime Minister is not listening to him effectively. He said that the Prime Minister should set out why he thinks he didn't break the Ministerial Code, and he says the Prime Minister hasn't done that and that he needs to do that, and that's why he's effectively threatened to resign.
Well, sorry, the question of whether he threatened to resign is just media speculation. But on the question of the specific points, the PM has addressed that in the way I described in a letter to Lord Geidt, so squarely addressing those two particular points.
And talking of media speculation, I mean, you suggested that these rumours that the Prime Minister might have a vote of no confidence was also just that. Are you confident then that come next week, once recess is over, there won't be a vote of confidence? Because we're hearing from many sources that perhaps the 54-letter threshold has now been reached, but it's being delayed because of the Jubilee celebrations.
Well, of course, it's only Graham Brady, the chair of the 1922 committee, that will know, but I'm confident that the overwhelming majority of MPs that I talk to want to see us focused on the job at hand, the cost of living, the situation in Ukraine, the crime-fighting agenda, the skills agenda, and so I think it's very unlikely we'll see a leadership challenge.
OK, interesting. So you just to be clear then, you don't think that will happen next week?
No.
It's difficult to talk about the things that matter to people, such as the ongoing cost of living crisis, when the Prime Minister's integrity is continually called into question. First of all, with the police investigation, then the Sue Gray investigation. You've got the Privileges Committee that's also got an investigation, and now you've got this intervention by Lord Geidt. There continues to be questions that are asked about the Prime Minister's integrity, which means that government can't get on with the business of trying to solve the country's problems.
There's no doubt, and I think it's a fair challenge, that this has been a distraction and there's significant issues at play, but that's why, through the Sue Gray report, the Met investigation, now Lord Geidt's letter, the PM has answered and addressed all of them at length. I do think your viewers, my constituents, the public at large, expect us to be really focused on those bread and butter issues, the cost of living, what we're doing on that. All the measures that I mentioned in relation to the NI tax cut, but also the cash grant for dealing with energy bills, and it's very important the government is unswerving and totally focused in its energies on delivering in those areas. And there's other things, it's not just the economy. The crime fighting agenda, I've been up at HMP Exeter this week looking at how we get more offenders into work, because that keeps our streets safer, those issues. And I think that overwhelmingly that's what the public want of us.
I want to ask you, before we let you go, Deputy Prime Minister, about the situation at the airports up and down our great country. Huge problems, people trying to get away, people trying to come in for the Platinum Jubilee. Not a great advertisement for us on this great celebration. Also worries about rail strikes. Can you give us your thoughts on those?
Well, first of all, on travel and international travel, it's great news that as the pandemic has subsided and confidence in travel has returned as a result of the vaccine rollout, that we have got this resurgent demand to travel. That's good news. We provided £8 billion of support to the sector during the pandemic. That was right, to make sure we supported them. We've addressed some issues in relation to regulation to streamline the recruitment process. We recognise that. But of course, ultimately, it's up to those businesses to have the proper planning in place and the proper recruitment, which the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, has engaged with them on for months to be able to deal with their customers. And in relation to the railways, look, I think, of course, we've heard from probably the most militant of unions in RMT, suggestions around strike action. I can't see how that helps passengers or indeed the rail sector deal with the challenges and indeed the opportunities coming back from the pandemic with different patterns of rail usage. And I don't think that that's responsible strike action in those areas.
All right, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. Really appreciate your time. That is the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab, joining us on GB News Breakfast. Let's speak to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood. Tom, what did you have to make about what the Deputy Prime Minister had to say?
Well, it's pretty clear he feels he needs to sort of shore up the ship, say that we're not expecting a leadership election. Although listening to his words that he used, he was saying the people he was speaking to. Now, that doesn't mean,
I thought that was interesting.
That doesn't mean every single Conservative MP. He might
perhaps
just be
he's not in touch.
Well, I think he might be using a clever caveat there, because it does seem like we are inching towards that total number. However, it's very understandable that someone in the Cabinet wouldn't want to create a headline saying that they expect something like that to happen next week. So I think that was a very interesting part of what was being said, but also the wider agenda of thinking about the things that matter, talking about the things that matter. This is the line that we've been hearing from the Cabinet for quite some time now. There's a big question as to whether the backbench Conservative MPs who get to decide this stuff think that that is a line that is working or not. Do they think that, yes, of course people would like the big issues to be tackled with? What is the obstacle to that? Is that the media? Now, lots of people think it is, that the media are obsessing over this relatively minor matter of a cake in the Cabinet room. Or is it actually the Prime Minister who's the block to talking about the big issues because there was this obfuscation over Partygate for so long?
Yeah, so there's that wrestle between the media and Number 10 over the narrative. That's effectively what we're seeing.
Yes, I think that's exactly what we're seeing. And ultimately what you have is two sides who are speaking almost cross purposes, saying, well, of course we want to talk about the big issues that the country faces. There are big issues to get on with. Now, on one side, people say, well, of course, the only way to do that is by shutting up about Partygate and moving on. Get over yourselves. And then the other half say, well, the only way to get over Partygate is to get rid of the Prime Minister. And both of these sides are making, in effect, the same argument, but in a very different way.
Yeah, but I would point out that those people in the media who are questioning the narrative from the Prime Minister are doing so off the back of Conservatives, Brexiteers, stalwarts and faithful Boris supporters like Andrea Leadsom now coming out publicly and saying that his integrity was in question. Heavyweights like William Hague, former Attorney General as well, amongst those who publicly condemned the Prime Minister. And I think certainly from the email inbox as well, a small sample of what's going on out there in terms of, you know, the right of the country is that there seem to be more people questioning that narrative.
Yes, it's clear that this is no longer sort of a Remainer plot to dislodge the Prime Minister. There are people who would rather the Prime Minister gone for a number of reasons. Now, it's very hard to read into those reasons. Of course, this is a government that has raised taxes. This is a government that has succumbed to pressure on windfall taxes, on a splurge of £15 billion in spending to help people with energy bills, spending £15 billion when even the Labour Party was only asking for the government to spend £2 billion. Now, to some people on the right, that's a bit of a warning sign that this is a government that might have lost its way. And so that might have fed into this as well. There are so many different issues here. And when in effect, we've had a government in power for 12 years in one form or another. When we're slap bang in the middle of a parliament as well, a lot of crows begin to circle. And I think that, to some extent, is what we've been seeing this week. However, on the other side of the ledger, we are, of course, mid-term in Parliament. The Tories are 6 or 7 points behind the Labour Party. That's not particularly unusual. Former Conservative Prime Ministers have had a lot worse positions that they have recovered from in the polls. And the real question for Conservative MPs over the next 5 or so days is this position, which is in no doubt not a good one right now, is it recoverable? Will a big policy push on getting inflation down, for example, on fixing the economy, would a big policy push like that be able to recover the reputation of this government, or is it irreparable? That is what Conservative MPs have to really contend with.
Yeah, you don't think, not Dominic Raab, but, well, maybe Dominic Raab, but I was thinking, you don't think Andrea Leadsom fancies a shot again at the top job?
Well, of
that
course,
might be why.
Of course, she famously stood in 2016, but not in 2019. I think, frankly, there isn't the support coalescing around Andrea Leadsom at this point, although there are a number of people not in Cabinet who do have some support coalescing around them. Tom Tugendhat is a name that is often mentioned. Penny Mordaunt is a name that is often mentioned. And then you get to the Cabinet where we're looking at, for example, Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary. You're looking at Nadeem Zwahi, the Education Secretary. You're looking at Rishi Sunak, of course, whose star has dimmed but not gone out, and, of course, Liz Truss. There are lots and lots of names, and this is one of the other problems, that there is no immediate, obvious successor. Now, one of the arguments trotted out by people about changing prime ministers in a moment of crisis is, well, of course we've changed prime ministers in moments of crisis before. Winston Churchill came in 1940, in the middle of the Second World War, but there wasn't a leadership contest. That was a simple swap, a simple replacement. And I think there's a difference between a simple swap where there's an individual that the party or the parliament as a whole, as was in that case, has coalesced around one individual saying this is the person that must take us forward to get us out of this. That's a very different prospect to we must turn ourselves into a leadership election where there are 5 or 6 or 7 different candidates, none of whom is the immediate front runner, and we're going to sort of tear chunks of it out of each other for the next 3 months and try and find out what's going on.
3 months is how long it would be, a leadership contest?
Well, it depends. Different stages. This is up for the 1922 committee to exactly set out. So, for example, in 2016, it was meant to be a very long one because David Cameron wanted to go to a NATO summit. Well, that was in the end cut short because Andrea Leadsom dropped out. But these things are set by the 22.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Always
Thank
good
you,
to
Tom.
talk to you, Tom.
Yeah,
Thanks
cheers,
very
Tom.
much.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.